Chris Lee, Billy Derrick, and Luke Wyatt here. We are the VandySports podcast. We are part of the 440 Sports Network. We thank our sponsors, Wash House, the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, Sutherland and Belk, and the Maynard Nexon Government Contacts Group for making this possible. And as always, we start with our news. Our news is presented by my good friend Steve Andrews at the Wash House, just one of the best people I know. He is our presenting sponsor for basketball season and a longtime Vanderbilt fan. I don't know about you guys, but time is an obstacle for me. And if you're dreading laundry day, and if it's stealing time from the things you enjoy, let the professionals at Wash House take care of that for you. With 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area, just drop off your dirty laundry, and our professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. I could use more time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Check out washhouseclean.com. Stop in today and get your time back. Okay, the news that Wash House is presenting is this. The non-conference basketball schedule is out, and Joey Dwyer's got a brief thing up on our YouTube channel where he talks about the schedule. If you have not heard it, here it is. Vanderbilt opens with Presbyterian on Tuesday, November the 7th. Then it goes USC Upstate, UNC Greensboro, Central Arkansas, all those at home. It then goes to Vegas for a game against NC State, and then either BYU or Arizona State. Then comes the ACC-SEC Challenge, Vanderbilt and Boston College, November the 29th. That's in Nashville. That's kind of a late-night game at 8:15 Central. Alabama A&M. So the Commodores face Alabama A&M on the hardwoods and the gridiron. We'll get into the football game in just a minute. San Francisco and Nashville. That's an NCAA tournament team from, I think, a couple years ago. Then the USLBM Coast to Coast Challenge. That's Texas Tech and Fort Worth, followed by Western Carolina and a return trip to Memphis, of course, to balance out that home game in Nashville to open last season. So that's your basketball schedule. We're still over 2 months out from that, but it'll be here before we know it. Okay, the topics on today's show, as well as this season's baseball content, are presented by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. That's a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. My friend Davis Young is the guy that runs that company. It's a partnership that began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. They serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia today. They go to convenience stores, grocery stores, other places. They also do Mayfield, Nestle, and Haagen-Dazs. But guess what, guys? My fridge right now is stocked with Purity ice cream. And I think I'm going to try everything. But I'm going to make some recommendations because you guys know I love my ice cream, so you can take me seriously on this. Have you guys had the Moose Tracks from Purity?
Oh, the Moose Tracks is the best.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Have you had the Turtle Tracks?
Yes, I have.
I have not.
Kind of guy that eats ice
You
cream.
need to. That's why we get along, Luke. Yeah, I've got both those in my fridge right now. I tried the Turtle Tracks for the first time. They're pretty darn good. The Moose Tracks are just flat out amazing, though.
Yeah, you can't beat the Moose Tracks.
You get those big random chunks of chocolate at the top when you open those, and I might or might not skim a few of those off the top and not leave them for the rest of the family. But that'll be our secret. So, in any case,
in the lightning delay.
Say what?
I was dreaming about that during the lightning delay.
Yeah, I think we all were. I dream about ice cream frequently. And,
they had cupcakes for us in the press box, though.
Oh, okay. Keep bragging.
Those are nice, but they're not ice cream.
No.
I'm going to make a request. Vanderbilt press box, you need to have Purity ice cream. Let's make that happen. An ice cream freezer in there. I mean, that'd be awesome. All right, gentlemen.
I don't think Chris would cover the game.
I might not. I might just sit in the back and keep it going. Yeah, I mean, we could do an ice cream podcast. Trust me, we could do an ice cream podcast. But I think people tuned in for sports today, and so let's talk about that. The depth chart came out On Tuesday, it is exactly the same as the depth chart that we got last week for Hawaii, on down to either Drew Dickey or Walter Taylor at 3, although I think it was again listed in the reverse order. I'm going to get y'all's thoughts on the depth chart. I'll start with you, Billy, and then go to Luke.
Yeah, I think the big position question mark right now remains the cornerback position. And Chris, I think this was you that put this out, and maybe it was on the message board. You put out the split playing time for Tyson Russell and Martell Height, and it was about 50-50, right? So, I'm looking at that. I'm not surprised there's not any movement there because they'll probably split 50-50 again. And BJ Anderson, I thought, played well. He had a really nice pass deflection. Obviously, all the corners made some mistakes. It's game one. I thought BJ was a bright spot. We didn't see Davion Walker, so I think that'll be something to continue to monitor. He's still where he was last week on the depth chart. I'm looking at that corner spot, and Clark Lee mentioned it in his press conference. He said, we don't. This is not a read and react situation with these spots, right? Before the game starts, we split this time up and say Russell will be in this possession, right? Hyde will be in this possession. So I thought that was interesting because, by the end of the game, you want to have your guys ready to roll to win a game. So, but yeah, other than that, that's really what I'm watching right now, Chris, the movement at the cornerback position. And I'm not surprised to see Hernandez still starting at center, but I'm monitoring that as well. Hernandez and the offensive line as a whole, as a matter of fact, struggled against Hawaii. So, and there are guys behind those starters that, I think can challenge. Now, I don't know that they will, but a guy like a Charlie Clark, I think could potentially challenge. Leighton Nelson, who I think is banged up right now. Grayson Morgan. So I'm tracking offensive line as well. Other than that, I think everything else, null and void. I think we saw that Davion Davis will still be out. Darren Agu, questionable, correct, Chris? Still. So,
there's been some mixed things on whether he plays against Alabama, and I think I'd hold him out, but that's just me.
Yeah. So other than that, I'm tracking the cornerback position and the offensive line, Luke, to see what type of movement there is at those spots, because those are the spots that I think struggled the most against Hawaii.
Well, I agree with the offensive line. I think, we talked about the consistency of having those 5 in practice all during camp. And I think there's 3 other guys play. I think we played 8 offensive linemen the other night, if I'm not mistaken. And of those 8, 5 got the majority of the snaps. I just think you'll see Grayson Morgan. He didn't play, did he? I never saw him in the game.
Nope.
If he did, it was special teams.
Okay. Well, I think you may see him if there's still troubles continue there. But that's the only place. Ugo and Agu are both out. I think Ugo's out, correct?
Ugo is, Clark said, slowly getting back.
Okay.
So
that's the only thing I worry about is this depth thing we talk about. And I'm not worried about it Saturday. I think Saturday you're going to see the blowout that everyone thought you would see against Hawaii, against Alabama A&M.
Yeah, I'm checking the offensive line. I'm looking at the snap counts according to Pro Football Focus. And guys, again, that's one of the things we say, that there's things at the site that you don't get on the podcast. We have snap counts every week at VandySports.com for your premium
That's what
membership.
I was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go down all that, but snap counts for reserve linemen, it was Gage Pitchford played 8 snaps at guard, and Kevo Wesley played 7. Wesley was going in on that for the Castillo spot, I believe, and Pitchford would have been going in, I guess, for
Ashmore.
Yeah. And Ashmore graded out as the best offensive lineman, hands down, according to Pro Football Focus, for whatever that's worth. So, yeah, I mean, hey, guys, at least we got a depth chart. Alabama doesn't have that, so I don't know what we make of that, but yeah.
First time in 17 years.
What in the world, Luke? What would be behind something like that? I know this is a Vandy podcast, but I'm just very curious your thoughts on that.
Certain coaches, we won't talk about, they're paranoid, and they think that any minute detail that may be used against them, they stay away from it. If they're not told they have to do something, they don't do it. And he's one of those kind of guys, He just is.
Coaches are paranoid?
Yeah, that one.
Luke's been around a few of them.
Oh, I have stories, trust me. Okay. Let me ask you guys this next. We've had a few days to process. Sometimes after a few days to process, maybe some things pop that we are more concerned about after a few days. Sometimes maybe some things we were concerned about on Saturday night are not as big a concern. And I'm going to start with you, Luke. And by the way, I think the weirdest thing about this, I swear, if all you saw were the press conferences Saturday night and Tuesday, you would think that Vanderbilt lost the game, which is kind of interesting. And I think a good sign in a lot of ways, because I think it points to raised expectations that they were disappointed with the win. Luke, now that you've had a few days to sleep on it, how do you evaluate things? Is there something maybe you're more concerned about than you were on Saturday night in the verse? And, oh, by the way, if you saw the post-game show, Billy and Luke did that. It was 37 minutes. The intention was that would be an hour and a half. And the intention was that Joey and I would join. We could not because Chili's closed at midnight. The game didn't start till 8:11, and then it lasted 3.5 hours. And so all that, Chili's, I think, was gracious enough to let you guys go over time. But just going to put that out there. The post-game show going forward is going to look different than it did Saturday night. But anyway, Luke, I'll let you answer this one again first.
Well, I've watched the game now twice since obviously watching it live. First of all, let's give credit. Let's go to the Hawaii side first. Shager, I don't remember. His receivers caught everything he threw. He threw the ball extremely well. I watched. There were a couple plays, especially the Mahoney play, where that was covered as well as you can cover it. The ball was just thrown in a Coke bottle. I was not predicting the blowout last week anyway. I felt it would be a 2-2. I think I predicted 37-21. And it's kind of what it was. We had 14 and 21-point leads that we relinquished. So, therefore, I think that's basically what the game was. We have just, in Savion Riley, first time he's gotten playing time, he got beat deep. There was a couple of fourth down plays that they converted, and you got to give them a little credit. So, I'm not – my biggest concern coming out of the game was the offensive line's execution, not the fact that they got physically whipped or anything, just the execution. And I think that was possibly, first game jitters. The O-lineman, personality of O-linemen are different than anybody else on the team. They're the jolly guys. Now, the ones that have the mean streak in them are usually the 5 that are starting. But I think he had some kids out there Saturday night that were like, oh, gosh, we've got the lead. We can take a play off. You can't do it. And I think that was my only concern. And I think that will be corrected by Coach Blazik this week.
I'm glad you gave credit to Hawaii, Luke, because they deserve a ton of credit. They came over to Nashville and were ready to play. Coach Chang had a phenomenal plan, and they could have won that game, right? Clark Lee said after the game Vanderbilt was fortunate to come away with a win. Hawaii's better. I think they probably make a bowl game this year. They got Stanford on Friday night, I think, and so that'll be interesting, right? To track. I think some Vandy fans might be surprised to see Hawaii go compete against Stanford at home. So, yeah, number one, credit to Hawaii. Number two, I said last week I expect Vanderbilt to run the ball maybe more than people would expect. I think I underestimated Hawaii's defense. Credit to a lot of the push they got. I mean, Vanderbilt's offensive line really struggled. I think that is due more to the struggles of Vanderbilt's offensive line. I talked about how Vanderbilt, should have had more rushing yards, right, in the postgame show. Both teams about 40 rushing yards. You should be out rushing Hawaii, right? So I think that's the first thing there. Also, penalties. Clark was not happy with the penalties. Not a crazy bad number, but 8 for 72, right? That's not necessarily a recipe to win a game, especially a game of that close, right? Week 1. You got to clean it up a little bit there. Other than that, the corners, we knew, I think going into it, we knew the corners would struggle. Tyson Russell, Anderson. Height, I thought, got in there and did some good things at times. Luke, you mentioned after the game you didn't see Trudell Berry. So I think that's something to continue to track there. I thought another thing, and I know I'm all around the boat here, but I thought the linebackers weren't as dominant as I expected them to be. You know, there was a few lapses in coverage, and after the game, CJ Taylor, or I think this was yesterday at the presser, CJ Taylor talked about how they saw some plays from Hawaii that weren't on film. So again, credit to Timmy Chang in Hawaii for fighting and scratching and clawing, for their homeland. And Clark, this team knew Hawaii was gonna, come out and be ready to play. Right, Derrick, you're right. After the game, I think somebody asked him, "Did you guys underrate Hawaii? Right? Did you guys kind of sleep on Hawaii?" He said, "No, we knew Hawaii was going to come in and challenge us." So again, not stunned by anything, but a little surprised by a couple things in this game.
Chris, if I could jump in for just a second, you had Gavin Schoenwald on, and he made an interesting comment. I think you asked him about the delay and who it affects more, and I've been through them. It affects the home team more. I've been through them on the road, and the reason why, the coaches aren't in there monitoring you. They'll just tell you, get off your feet, relax, do whatever you want to do. But kids will get some more food in them. They get sluggish. Now, if you're in an enclosed environment like Hawaii was, the coaches can sit there and look at everything they're doing. And they know, okay, stretch it out. Let's do a little stretching here or do what, Whereas the players are all over the place. They walk all over Magoogan. The Temple game, I hate to go back to that, but that was the lightning delay game. We obviously played poorly in that. You go back to 2 or 3 that I remember in my history, and they've always been worse at home.
Interesting. And by the way, people are wondering, where did you have Gavin on? That's on my SEC site, Southeastern 14. So that's not something that appears on VandySports, but Gavin's kind of been a co-host for me over there with the daily show we're doing from 11 to noon there. Luke, I want to ask you something. Vanderbilt went basically to a 2-corner 4-safety look, if you count CJ Taylor as a safety. Probably, I don't know, sometime in the second quarter. I think it continued to some degree, and I think at one point they went back to 4-down linemen. But I'm very curious as to how that looks going forward. I think we thought they'd have more depth on defensive line. Now, look, they're without Christian James, who's probably in that top 5 or 6 linemen on the team group. They're without Darren Agu, who is debatably their most talented defensive lineman, and so that's something to ponder. But I'm very curious how their looks are going forward. Do we see more of that 6 DB thing that they showed, or I wonder if that was just a dealing with the Hawaii offense kind of look?
No, I think it was because of the type of offense we were playing. When you play against the run and shoot, get just a standard 4-man rush, the way we started the game, you're hardly ever going to get there. You're not going to, we got 3 sacks. That's actually pretty good against the run and shoot. That it's all the ball is like boom, 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 get it out of there. So I don't think you'll see that unless you're facing a team that throws the football a lot. We won't be in dime that much. I think you'll see more of how we started the game. I'm not sure. Alabama A&M, we don't have any film on them yet. I'm not sure what they do, but I don't think you'll see it near as much unless they just sling it all over the yard too. It's more predicated on what the offense is doing.
I want to ask you guys both something, because I've been on record. I said coming in, by far my biggest concerns were pass defense at the corner spots. I think you saw that play out as a concern. And the run defense, I was kind of the one that said, I'm not the run defense, the rush offense, the running back position. I was more concerned about that, I think, that both of you guys are. Billy, I'll start with you. Where are you on their pass defense and their rush offense at this point?
Yeah, pass defense, same place I was. We knew. I think I and Luke, you said it. I think we both said it. Hawaii's going to score, right? We knew Hawaii was going to put up points, so I haven't really shifted on where Vanderbilt is at the cornerback position. Maybe a little bit on B.J. Anderson. That play, and Luke, you mentioned this in the post game. That deflection, I think it was in the fourth quarter, just about saved the game. I mean, Hawaii. They tie the game if they score there. Right. So massive play by B.J. Anderson, and he's gotten better. I think he flashed at times last season as well. So if I had to pick a player that would be most improved going off of one game, I might go Anderson against Hawaii. Hyatt and Barry, there's just, 50-50 split. We know Barry struggled, or not Barry, Russell, Hyatt and Russell. We know Russell struggled, but Martell Hyatt, I think, obviously will continue to slowly get to play more. So I'm looking forward to that. For the rushing offense, yeah, Chris, I was pretty surprised. I was just surprised more so by the offensive line, the lack of push. Also, pass protection struggled at times. I think pass protection was good. I didn't think it was bad by any stretch, but they had their moments. But I mean, coming into this game, Chris, I thought Vanderbilt was going to be able to impose their will whenever they wanted to, right? Be able to run the ball in the fourth quarter when you had to. And they weren't able to do that. And Clark said it after the game, we've got to be able to run the ball when we have to run the ball. And that's the sign of a team that's still growing in their identity. I think at times, and I told you this in the booth, Chris, a lot of the handoffs just looked, I don't know if this isn't a word, but unsmooth. And obviously it's game one, but whether it's a hitch in the handoff from Swan or the running back just not getting into a rhythm, right? And that's game one. You're going to see some of that, and it'll get better. But yeah, Chris, I was surprised by the lack of physical runs too. There weren't really, you saw the run from Patrick Smith, and then I think Gillespie had, but I think that was even a catch out of the backfield. So yeah, there was no mauling and imposing the will, on Hawaii from Vanderbilt. And I'm looking for them to establish that against Alabama A&M because they should be able to. And if they can against Alabama A&M, you got a serious problem.
Let me say this about, first of all, our opponent this week. I do know this much about them. They'll do some strange stuff where the defensive line will stand up, linebackers will move into the hole and gap, and you don't have anybody to block. You just stand there and you're not sure who to block. They try to confuse you. So that's going to be something to watch early in the game. They do a lot of gimmicky stuff.
Is this the run and shoot defense?
It may be. That's a good way of describing it. When you're undersized and that type of thing, and maybe under-talented, you do it when you can to confuse the offense. And I think you may see a little bit of that. But quickly, the offensive line, again, I think it was more execution than anything. I think they felt like last year we mauled this team on the ground. It was a totally different situation, guys. And our guys, we had, I don't want to call out names on this, but we had a couple of guys that I thought just played poorly, period. Yeah. It didn't matter who we were playing Saturday. They would have graded out poorly. And I think they will have, that was an attention getter. And it'll be corrected by Saturday.
Yeah. And I'll add this real quick too. Sometimes you mentioned you just play bad, right? You play poorly. Yeah. I agree. Look, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Guys, I still think they're going to have a freshman starting at running back by November. Is anybody with me on that one?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Although we didn't see a ton of those freshmen, which I was a little surprised by, but they didn't run the ball all the time. Both.
Yeah. Newberry didn't play, and Alexander, which I wasn't surprised that Newberry didn't play. He's a fourth probably. I mean, they didn't put him on the depth chart, but in my mind, after watching fall camp, he's their fourth back. And Alexander only got 2 carries for 3 yards. So it's not like he was great either, but he didn't have a lot of chances.
Right. I'll say this too, Chris, and Luke and I talked about this in the postgame. Logan Kyle's little end around, right? And I think somebody in the booth compared it to a Brock Bowers type of, play where they involve their tight end in the run game. I think that's something to watch because Clark has talked about he's got receiver speed. I'm not saying Kyle's going to go for 50 or 60 yards on one of those, but I think you get in the red zone but you also have to have an established run game at that point. So you get the run game going first, and then you can start to involve Logan Kyle as well. We saw Jade McGowan at the running back position. So I think they're looking for somebody to really take hold of that position. You're right, Chris. I think a freshman or somebody's going to have to step up, right? Whether it's a freshman, Gillespie, Smith, whoever. Maybe McGowan starts to get more carries, but I think they're searching for some answers there at running back, just like corner.
Go ahead, Luke.
the one thing, and some of our older fans will remember this. This offense reminds me a little bit of the '82 team that couldn't run the ball as far as just traditional handoffs. Their running game really was part of the passing game, where you just short passes out of the backfield,
Mm-hmm.
players are throwing it to them at the line of scrimmage and let them make a move and go. I think that's what you're going to see out of this running game until they get someone established who's doing both blocking and running the football well. I think that was part of the problem the other night. No one really did anything consistently. After the first drive, when Patrick Smith had the 20-yard run or whatever it was for the touchdown, they were all making busts and mistakes. And that, when you do that, you kind of just go away from it. And I think that's what we did.
Okay, I want to ask you guys this. This is a game coming up that Vanderbilt should win handily. I would say 30 points or more. I want to get a sense of what you guys are looking for in these games, and I'll start with Billy in a minute after I give you my thoughts. Here's my thing. When I perceive something as a weakness, I watch for that. Again, we saw issues with pass coverage, with run defense, and I don't think that necessarily you'll learn a lot by blowing Alabama A&M out of the water. But I think what you do learn is if you can't do the things that we're concerned about against a team like that, then you've really got problems. So, like, in my mind, if they're averaging under 5 yards a rush on Saturday, taking sacks out of it, if they're still getting burned at corner, I think those are still – I mean, I think they're concerns anyway, but I think I'm more concerned at that point. So that's kind of what I'm watching for, the things that did not go well against Hawaii. Do those show up again against Alabama A&M? Those are what I'm watching for. Billy, I'll get your opinion on what you're looking for, and then Luke.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. You know, if they're giving up nearly 400 total yards to an Alabama A&M, you know, that's a serious problem. Also, time of possession. Hawaii won time of possession 31-35 to Vanderbilt's 28-25. And again, I know that that's a stat that people probably overrate, but I think there's something to be said about that. Hawaii had some long drives where, you know, they would convert, and, you know, they ran the ball decent at times. I thought they had some big runs on some big third and fourth downs, mostly third downs, I think. So time of possession, Vanderbilt should own time of possession against Alabama A&M. Secondly, the running game. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? You should be able to dominate Alabama A&M. They are an FCS program, and you know about, you know, the Vanderbilt's history, at least recent history against FCS teams. Clark will have this team motivated. It's a huge get-right game, right? I think there's all, you know, after the game, the players, coaches, everybody, no one was happy, right? And I think you made a good point, Chris, how, you know, you would have thought watching the press conferences that they might have lost that game, right? Because of just how down everybody was. And it's easy to tell when Clark, right? When Clark's not happy, you know, you know. So, and the team wasn't happy either. The team felt the same way. So that's sort of the silver lining here. They know they didn't play well. They didn't finish the game. They've got another opponent to go fix it before they go up to Winston-Salem. So this is a huge week. It's a huge week for film. You mentioned this after in the post game, Luke. You'd love to be a fly on the wall this week, you know, in the film room. I'd love to as well, just to see they've got a lot of things to correct. So yeah, passing, just like you, Chris. That what adjustments do they make at corner? Right? Do they switch at all? Right? Do they switch height or Russell's playing time at all? Does that fluctuate? Do we see Trudell Berry? Right? Are the corners more physical? Do they play more press? Because the cushion was a little shocking at times, you know, a 15, 20-yard cushion and, you know, automatic first down for Hawaii. So, yeah, what adjustments do they make at corner? And then can Vanderbilt just dominate in the run game, right? Win this game on the ground. That's what I'm looking for this week against A&M.
Well, I look at, first of all, if you take one word and describe this game, it was sloppy. Yeah. And that's something that you can correct. So that's, as a coach, you wake up on Sunday morning and you feel a little better because you think, okay, we didn't get whipped. We just mentally weren't great. And physically, we didn't give the effort we should. and we still got away with it with a win. So sloppy would be my one word to describe this past Saturday. Secondly, the time of possession thing I'm not worried about because you have to factor in the kickoff return. That's an extra possession really that Hawaii gets. So that makes up for the difference there. Jaden McGowan going 97 on one play.
Right.
I feel like this coming week, you're right. I think, you're looking at a 45 to 14, 45 to 17 type game. And I think you'll see a lot more guys play. I think that's one thing Clark wasn't happy about. I think, and Chris, you probably have this in front of you and Billy. I think we played maybe 24, 25 guys on defense, 20 guys, 21 guys on offense. That needs to be more like 30 and 25. And I think of course, injuries have something to do with that. But I think you're going to see a lot more kids get chances this weekend because moving into Wake Forest, that depth chart we talked about, whether they change it for you guys and us, it's going to be different when we get to Wake Forest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to answer that question, Luke, they played 21 guys on offense and 22 on defense. Now, again, one thing I want to circle back on is the Trudell Berry situation. They played 3 guys at corner. Anderson went the entire way at one corner, and then you got a virtual 50-50 split between Hyde and Russell at the other. I don't know if Berry was hurt in the doghouse, if they just trusted Anderson, but I thought that we'd see him. If you say they're going to play, 40, 43 guys on offense and defense, I would have thought Trudell Berry would have been in there somewhere.
Did he play?
I think
Luke
he
cut off.
might have. Yeah, he asked about special teams. Did he play special teams?
That's what I thought. Pro Football Focus did not have these special teams grades up as of yesterday. I didn't check it this morning on Wednesday morning, but I do have Vanderbilt's participation report, and he's not in there at all. So I don't know. No, sometimes they miss some things. That's from the box score from Saturday night. If you guys have ever been in a press box trying to spot those things, it's easy to miss some things. But the participation report didn't have him on there. He's certainly not on the defensive snap count chart at PFF, and the special teams again is I hadn't checked it as of 24 hours ago. So, or I had checked it and it wasn't up.
Let me say this. What happens a lot of times, guys, on game day, and if you guys don't ask about it at the press conference, and I'm not saying Trudell did this, I'm just giving you an example of what happens a lot. If someone was late for something on Friday, a meeting or a lifting session, a lot of times if they were borderline going to play anyway, then they don't play. You're never going to hear about it because the coach isn't going to bring it up in the press conference. He's going to let you bring it up. Why did Trudell Berry not play? And it's usually something like that sometimes, especially with a young kid. It's more of a discipline thing than anything.
Yeah, and I should have brought that up on Tuesday, and it was in the back of my head, but I never did bring it up.
It's interesting too, Chris. We've talked one more thing on this. I know we got to get to a lot of mailbag questions, but Jeffrey Ugo, Steven Sanianiola, Trudell Berry, those guys in the 2022 class, we just haven't really seen. I know they're banged up. I know that. But that's something to continue to track throughout this season. What kind of impact can they make, right? If any, right? Are they able to get back healthy? Because I think that's sort of an X factor this season. Can Sanianiola, Ugo, and Berry come back and make an impact? And even a guy like Quantavis Gaskins, J-Mo Wharton, right? Those guys are all out. I mean, so that's something that I think has contributed to the lack of depth in the secondary. I mean, they just haven't been able to be out there. So I think that's another thing to watch down the stretch of the season. If they're able to come back, I think that potentially helps the room. Now they're young, right? But just in terms of pure depth, I think that's something to track.
Billy, let's grab the mailbag and let's do this. We'll all give our takes on the question. I'll let you give yours first, followed by Luke, and then I'll wrap up if I've got any thoughts that you guys didn't hit. But let's go ahead and go there.
Let's do it. And it's brought to you by Sutherland and Belk, the long-lasting sponsor of VandySports.com. John Sutherland, of course, everybody knows him, of course, in this community, and family-owned injury law firm. If your loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. Also, John Levin and the Maynard Nexen Government Contracts Group. Maynard Nexen advises government contractors on all aspects of their business with a proud focus on matching legal solutions to business needs. The group can be reached at 256-551-0171. Again, thank you to both of those sponsors for attaching their name here to the mailbag in this podcast. All right, let's get to the first question here. Yesterday at about 4:30, soon after you put this this request up on the board, Chris, Forever Gold. While I'm thankful for the win, we all agree that there were several disappointing performances Saturday night. Some expected, some unexpected. In y'all's opinion, what would be the most important thing, position, or player that has to have the most improvement from Saturday for this team to achieve its goals by season end? Luke, we'll start with you.
Offensive line as a whole just must improve with their execution and willingness to step up and make plays and, just do your job. Sounds simple, but that's basically what it was, because when I watched the two replays, you could just see it was more just mental bust than anything.
Yeah, Luke hits on a good thing. I do think that, again, some of the running game is, I'm not crazy about their backfield, and that's part of it too. But I think the line was maybe more to blame on that one. To me, the biggest thing, still my biggest concern coming into the opener and my biggest concern leaving the opener, because I think I've seen the line play better, that other corner spot. I do think B.J. Anderson's a little better than people are giving him credit for being. And I'm not trying to pick on Tyson Russell here or Martell Height. And, of course, Height was playing his first game, and I thought actually did okay in that circumstance. But, guys, if they can't cover from that other corner spot, teams are going to go to it over and over and over and over again. And so I want to see improvement out of both corners, but particularly that other one.
Yeah, most important, that's a tough aspect. But judging off of the Hawaii game, I might go offensive line, because if you can't protect A.J. Swan, and I'm not saying they didn't protect A.J. Swan, but if you can't allow your run game to get established, Vanderbilt's going to struggle to win, right, against any SEC team. Corner as well, right? I mean, we know the struggles at that position. But yeah, I mean, at offensive line, you can't block. You're not going to be able to run the ball. That means you're not going to be able to establish. And then it's harder for you to even get the passing game going. All right, let's get to SR Kane. We may learn more about our team from the Hawaii-Stanford game than our game this week. Thoughts? I think that's a good observation. And I mentioned that earlier, right? I think Hawaii can go and beat Stanford. They get them at home, right? That place is going to be packed. They're calling it the whiteout for Hawaii. Stanford is down, like very down. Coach Shaw is no longer there. He ended up retiring. So, I might agree with that. Although I think we're going to learn a little bit more about the response of this team, right, against Alabama A&M, and how they can finally dominate an opponent, because I think they will. And if they don't, there's some serious issues. But what do you guys think about that? Learn more about our team from Hawaii-Stanford than our game this week.
No, I agree with that. I think you will learn a lot. Now, what I want to see if Whitlock plays out of his head like he did the other night. Now, that kid, I guess he's the transfer from Kansas, the receiver for Hawaii. He
McBride. McBride.
As deep as we are in receiver, I would love to put him in our receiver group. That kid ran excellent routes. Nothing hit the ground. He caught everything thrown to him. If he has that type of game, he and Shager are hooking up again, Stanford will be in trouble. Hawaii will win that game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great observation. It's one that I'd already had in the back of my head. And by the way, I looked this up, guys. I was very interested to see what Vegas thought, and I believe that Stanford is only a 7-point favorite against Hawaii as of Tuesday. Say what?
3.5. Yeah.
Wow.
Didn't it start up around 9?
Started at 6.5. So the first time I saw it,
okay,
I had it Saturday night or Sunday. And I can't remember. I think Sunday, and it's now 3.5.
That's interesting, because I think, it came down at various points on the Vanderbilt game too. I think it was maybe 17.5. I think at some point it dropped maybe in the 16. So that's 2 straight weeks. I don't know what people up there know about Hawaii or whatever the case is, but that's interesting. That means on a neutral field it's a pick 'em.
Yeah.
Hawaii is a good football team. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, offensively, yeah. And we're seeing more and more of that around college football where offensively, this is a good team, but defensively, they got some issues, right? That's becoming a theme around the country and honestly in the sport of football as well. All right. Hogan knows. Does Luke think homegrown talent like we are getting now, Sherrill, Humphreys, Patterson, is more invested in the program than, say, a player from out of state? Luke?
I wouldn't say more invested, but what I do say is this: it helps us. The more we get, the more we will get. So I'm excited about it. I can remember all the kids, like a Hunter Hillenmeyer, who was local, who was honored the other night. He helps you recruit in the Nashville area, and that's the main thing. The connection that Clark has with NBA. It's not just NBA that helps. It not just helps us with NBA. It helps us with all the other local private schools and some of the public schools. I know we're going after a kid from Pearl Cone and some of the other places. We have a kid that starts from Laverne. The more of those kids you can get homegrown, absolutely, it does help.
All right, let's get to VU Matt 23. Can y'all give some thoughts about how you think each of their corner spots will change over the course of the next few games? I know we've talked about this, but just kind of a final, maybe, I guess, projection here. Tyson Russell started, but ended up having one less snap than Martell Height, whereas B.J. Anderson got every snap at the other corner spot, and Trudell Berry got 0. So, Luke, well, Chris, we'll start with you here. If you had to project how the corner spots might end up, I know this isn't an easy job, but that's a question that a lot of people have.
I said before the end of camp, I thought Martell Height was the most talented cornerback on the roster. I thought it was very clear. I also said that sometimes there's a learning curve that comes with that. To me, the fact that against a pass-heavy offense, they went to a virtual 50-50 split. I don't see Martell Height seeding anytime. I think he'll be starting probably before too long. There'll be some bumps that go with that. I think that they have been higher on B.J. Anderson than the public has been for a while, even back to last year. I think that BJ gets picked on a little bit by the fan base, a little bit unfairly. Billy, you pointed out, or I think it was you, maybe it was Luke. He made a really nice play. I think BJ Anderson played okay. And again, Luke, as you pointed out, Hawaii made some tremendous catches where the coverage was there, and they just made the plays. So I think that's the thing I'm watching is what happens at that other corner spot. I think Height will end up winning the majority of the snaps there, and maybe that's coming very soon if we don't see an improvement this weekend.
All right, VU 65. Why are our corners, another corner question, playing so far off the receivers at the snap? It appears they make it even more difficult to cover the short passes. Is our talent so bad we can't keep up with the receivers of teams like Hawaii? We'll start with that first part. Luke, I mean, did you notice an extra, too much cushion? I know that was a big talking point in the Coach Mason era. I don't know that I noticed it too much. I noticed it a couple times, but did you notice anything there?
At times, but usually that's when we have them backed up. Let's say if they're at the 25 or 20, they're on 20 or 25. You'll play that cushion because you're not, it's okay that they move the chains a couple of times. Then you change it as they start getting closer to your goal line. That's just most football teams do that.
And then the second part there, Chris, is our talent so bad we can't keep up with the receivers of teams like Hawaii? I mean, I think that's a question to be answered, right? I mean, Vanderbilt, right? They could have played better, and a lot of it Clark has mentioned, and he mentioned this yesterday. A lot of those errors in the secondary are coachable and correctable, right? Savion Riley late in the game, big play, right? He's a young kid. He didn't get up at the line and get physical enough. I think I forget the exact wording from Clark Lee, but there are things early in the route you can do as a corner to end up potentially winning the route and giving yourself a better chance at winning the route at the end. Clark talks about that all the time. So Clark says they're coachable and correctable. Chris, do you agree, or do you think that points to a lack of talent at corner?
Okay, if you've been a longtime listener to the podcast, you heard me saying this during the Mason days. They are not recruiting talent at corner. They just did not bring in a lot of good corners for years. They brought in Jawan Williams. Probably didn't hurt that he was dating the coach's daughter. That probably gave him a little bit of an edge there. They did develop Trey Herndon, but other than that, it was pretty bleak. And so that's the lot that Clark Lee inherited. The first class, he wasn't going to be able to do a lot about. The second class, and I wrote about this week, they went very defensive back heavy. Very defensive back heavy. I think they signed 9 guys at the time that were defensive backs, although I think Daniel Martin might have been a linebacker. Of course, he's now gone. But you add Davon Walker to that room now. He was recruited as a receiver. And I'm not throwing stones at the coaching staff here necessarily, but none of those guys really made much of an impact at corner. I think you did see Riley at safety, and he played okay. But my guess in their heart of hearts is when they signed all those guys in the winter of 2022, I think that if you had said, hey, let's look forward to opening night 2023, what do you think's going to happen? I think they would have said, and Luke, you can expand on this because I would love to hear your thoughts. My guess is they would have thought that class would have made a bigger impact in the secondary than it did. Now, a lot of that's injury. 3 or 4 of those guys have been hurt. Don't know what was going on with Barry. But I think this was maybe – I don't think that you can have an expectation at Vanderbilt that you have 3 or 4 impact level defensive backs as true freshmen. But maybe year 2 is when you can start to have some expectations. And to me, that's been a miss for whatever reason at this point.
Well, let's talk about technique for just a second. Not to get that I'm Coach Wyatt, but just watching all the football that I've seen over the last 40 years. You can watch these kids, and let's just take Tyson Russell, for example. In practice, he's doing the right things. In other words, what Clark was talking about, when you come off the line of scrimmage, you've got that free hand to punch with a little bit to kind of knock them off the route. That's the type of thing. That's what he was talking about with BJ. They do that stuff in practice. It's just when the lights come on and you're going against possibly, instead of a scout team guy that's giving you the look for Hawaii, that kid's running a 4.7, the Hawaii receiver's running a 4.45. So if you skip steps and don't make that jab and let him have a free run off the line of scrimmage, that's how they get behind you. There's nothing else you can do. So it's all about sticking to your technique.
All right, let's get to Vandy 34. How good is the food and nutrition program now? Obviously, I mean, it's much improved, right? The number of staff members in general has increased. Clark talked about he gave credit to the nutrition program for keeping Vanderbilt and their team, ready to play in the almost nearly 2-hour long delay. They deserve credit. Chris, we've been at fall camp. I think yellow shirts, green shirts, right? I mean, there's staff members everywhere. And even, walking through, there's all kinds of different options, whether it's snacks or drinks, just all kinds of options for the players. And again, I don't know as much as I should probably, but yeah, I mean, it's top notch, top of the line, and good enough for Clark to give credit to them after the game.
Yeah, the nutrition factor now is so different. When I first started working at Vanderbilt, you don't see kids now walking into practice with a bag of McDonald's or a pizza. You don't see it anymore. They're eating a yogurt bar or whatever it may be, or a lot of smoothies, stuff like that, which is great. So, and then they're being reminded constantly, hey, because they get weighed in every day, except for maybe like Sunday or Monday. So they weigh every day to monitor if they're eating what they should be eating. And so you're able to stay on top of it. And Clark's right. We didn't cramp up the other night. I think we had one C.J. Taylor went down one time. But besides that, I think Wyatt like 5 or 6. That's why the second half took so long.
Billy, you went to a bunch of practices with me. And you remember when we would walk down from our perch on that balcony there where they had us, and we would walk down to the playing surface. We would go down the stairs and we'd walk through that hallway. What did we see every practice?
I remember the multitude of snack options down there.
Yes. There was a smorgasbord. I think that's a podcast first time word here of snacks, drinks, all kinds of stuff. They had it very well laid out. They had the training staff wearing yellow. I think they had the nutrition staff wearing green, so that they needed to locate somebody to get somebody quickly. Eyes on that. And look, Clark Lee, and I think this was intentional. I thought it was very interesting that he led off the post-game press conference with thanking the nutrition guys, because as you guys noticed, there was a lot of cramping going on, and most of that was on the other sideline. Billy, we noticed we noticed in practice, one of the observations that I made is I don't think I saw hands on hips or guys bent over gassed at all.
Yeah.
Through any single fall camp practice. And I think I went to 15 of the 20. I did not notice that once. Now, I remember the first year. Now, I remember in Mason's years, there was a lot of hands on hips going on. And I think year one, year two, maybe there was still some carryover where guys weren't used to it. I remember one particular lineman who played a good bit a year ago, just throwing up constantly in camp because he just wasn't there in shape yet. You did not see any of that this year. I don't think it was coincidence that Clark Lee led the post-Hawaii press conference off the way that he did.
Yeah, and all the little things that you could do as a head coach that you can control, right? Extra staff members, right? Nutrition staff, conditioning, right? All of that's not one of the problems, right? With this program, right? The issues right now at certain positions is just depth and experience, right? But within the nutrition staff and the conditioning, the weight training, all of those intangibles, I guess you would say, within a coaching staff, Clark has done the right thing there, and that is, I mean, that's top notch, top of the line, their food nutrition program right now.
One other thing I want to bring up, towards the end of the Derrick Mason era, a lot of the workouts were optional, which is unthinkable for an SEC program, perhaps not coincidentally. They went 0 for the season in 2021. And Luke, you can probably comment on that. But, I mean, they had such a long way to go between where they were and where they are now.
Well, I think what had happened at that point, you had what I call a toxic locker room. And kids, I think Derrick, in his defense, was trying to do everything he could to keep people from leaving because there was stuff going on over there at that time, not just in football, on that campus that wasn't healthy. And we can't get into the weeds on that, but Chris, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, it was the worst thing. And I think I've said this before, but in case people are new, I was getting so many phone calls that year from people just alarmed about what was going on. I just got to the point, I'm like, I don't want to know anymore.
Right.
Because there's nothing I can do with it. And like once you hear something, you can't really unhear those things. And let me tell you, there was, I think the thing that bothered me most is Vanderbilt's reaction was not to try to correct mistreatment of things. It was to try to find out who was talking and to silence those people. Yeah. And there were threats. There were all kinds of things going on. I think what made me the angriest was there just wasn't any. It was instead of let's reflect and see what we can do better. It's no, let's find the people that are talking about this and let's get retribution on those people. That is what Clark walked into.
Yep.
And that's not happening anymore. So that is those are the things, right? Chris, like you just said, he had to change, and a lot of the the mentality, the mindset shift for these players. So to be able to get to a point where this program is visibly upset after winning a game against a solid opponent is a sign of growth for this program. It wasn't too long ago they were eking by wins over UConn and Colorado State, right, at home because of Joe Bulovas. So
and let me just add something there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to get this in before we move on to the next thing. When they beat Colorado State and Connecticut, and I think those were last play of the game type things. I mean, they celebrated like that was the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And you flash forward 2 years later to where they didn't blow out a team that was better than both of them, but they won. It felt like they lost that game. And again, I just think that shows you a lot about the shift.
Well, and let me add one thing. How many times in Vanderbilt history would Vanderbilt have lost Saturday night?
Yes.
Many.
They would have figured out a way when they didn't get when the onside kick happened and we got it back, or when we had to give it back to them. How many times did the team just take it down the field and score? That tells you they have advanced. Have they advanced as far as we all want them to? Of course not. But we're in year 3 of taking a program that he stripped down to these studs and started all over again.
And yeah, and Clark knows that. That's why he said they were fortunate.
Yeah,
right. They were fortunate to win that game.
Sure.
Chris, we've got one more here from Raiders 1967. Please reevaluate the tight end position. I think Raiders 1967 loves asking about the tight end position. I mentioned Logan Kyle. He had that end around carry there. I thought that was a play design you hadn't really seen a ton of from Vanderbilt over the last couple of years under Coach Lee. Justin Ball, I don't think had a reception. Chris, am I wrong? And he did?
One.
Okay, he had one. Yeah. Okay, so Ball had one. Other than that, nothing from Cameron Johnson. I don't think so. Luke, we'll start with you here. I mean, has anything changed with the tight end room and what they might try to do with that position this year?
No, and I don't think you'll see. I think what you saw in the tight end position the other night will be what you see moving forward.
Yeah, I'm looking at the grade sheet. Neither of those guys graded particularly well. Kyle graded better than Ball. I think he's probably the guy that maybe you're a little bit more concerned about if you're a defense, because you saw that end around. You saw that he can do some things with that. I'll say this. I just think that they are able to adjust in other ways. We told you about the depth of wide receiver room. I think you started to see some of that. I think Jaden McGowan's better. Will Shepherd is who he is. He's a stud. The Skinner injury will be one I'll monitor. That'll be one thing I probably should have mentioned when we said things to watch for Alabama A&M. It's whether Quincy Skinner plays or not. But you saw what we told you about in London Humphreys. Junior Searle, you didn't really see a lot of it. Richie Hoskins, you saw it on that end around that he took and broke some tackles and did some things there. So, again, my contention is that receiver room is the best room on the team. I think you will see some of those guys maybe start to eat into some of the tight end reps, because I think just you have to.
Yeah.
And also eat into some of the running back reps, like Luke said.
Possibly, yeah.
Right? I mean, you saw the London Humphreys, if he gets a block on that end around, that I think it might have been a double reverse, that's a touch. That's 6, right? And then I think Sherrill might have slipped on one of his carries. And the blocking wasn't going to be great there. So they're using Humphreys and Sherrill, right, and McGowan in the running game as well. So we'll have to monitor that also.
My thing is this: you've got to get your best 11 on the field on both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
11 is going to come from.
I'm glad you said that, because I want to throw something else in here too. We talk about best 11, and I talked about how Bryce Cowan was sort of this year's CJ Taylor. He didn't pop as much as CJ did. CJ just made a ridiculous number of plays. And then they went to the first half of the season. They just couldn't find room for him. I'm really interested to see if Bryce Cowan makes a push at some point. And again, I think you saw 6 DBs the other night. He really wasn't even in that group. But that's one I'm watching a little bit, is just to see how the pieces shift around during the season, and if he ends up getting a little more playing time, or maybe a lot more playing time than he did on. But no, the problem is I don't know exactly where to put him because I kind of like their linebackers, and the safeties they played pretty well, to be honest with you. Mahoney maybe didn't play as well as he can, but I trust him. So it's kind of a situation where he can help you. He might be one of the best 11, but I don't think you can play 7 defensive backs either.
Yeah, call me crazy here, and this might be out of this world. If the corners continue that other corner spot, if they just can't figure it out, right? They're still struggling against Alabama A&M, struggled against Wake. Vandy's 0-3, searching for answers at corner. Is CJ Taylor an option there? I think. I mean, again, I don't think it's going to happen, but these are some of the questions I think might have to be asked and answered if that other corner spot still can't find any rhythm or consistency. So I think there's a lot. You saw a lot of shifting, right, Chris? Positionally, defensively, you saw more of Mahoney at nickel. I don't think they want to have to do that. Luke, we talked about that after the game, where they want DeRicky Wright and Mahoney to be the two safeties, right? They don't want to have to push Mahoney back down to nickel as much as they did against Hawaii. But again, credit to Hawaii. They're a good team. And I'll be looking forward to seeing them Friday night. I think it's Friday night against Stanford.
It is.
Okay. But yeah, that's all the mailbag, Chris.
Yeah, speaking of opponents past and future, don't forget you watch Florida Utah Thursday night, so you can get a glimpse at one of Vandy's opponents. I didn't realize that the Hawaii Stanford game was Friday night, so thanks for letting me know to keep an eye on that.
Also tomorrow night.
I'm sorry.
Wake Forest and Elon.
Oh, okay. Good to know. So we'll get our first glimpse at Vanderbilt's week 3 opponent, or week 2, week 3 for them. I hate this week 0 thing. It's so confusing. But
it is.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, any parting thoughts as we put a bow on today's show? I'll start with you, Billy.
Yeah, I think we hit on most of it. I was trying to look through some of the players and see if I didn't mention anything. I know we talked a lot about what they have to fix. We know they don't have to fix the receiver room. Will Shepherd was tremendous. I mean, he made a couple of catches look easy again. I mean, that catch in the end zone on the soft short pass from Swan was, that's not the easiest catch. We had a corner draped all over him. I think the next step for Shepherd is not handing the ball to the corner and stepping over him and getting a penalty, right? I think that you don't, you're the best player on the field, right? I don't, and Clark would say that as well. That's the next step for him. McGowan, the kick return first in 9 years. I couldn't believe hearing that. Darius Sims, and McGowan after the game, watching the press conference, he mentioned that him and Darius were talking about it the other day. And McGowan said, he's been trash talking him about saying, I'm going to get you on that record. So happy for McGowan. Other than that, the defensive line, I don't know that we talked much about that. No Darren Agu, no Christian James. They got to the quarterback occasionally. I think, see a little bit more of that against Alabama A&M. I thought Clifton played pretty well. Don't think we saw Demarion Thomas. I could be wrong there, though. Devin Lee, I thought, played pretty well. He got another ticky-tack penalty. There were some extracurricular penalties from Vanderbilt that you just don't need, especially, a lot of those could cost you against an SEC team. So that's it for me, Chris. Again, clean it up penalty-wise, cornerback play, but the positives. And then A.J. Swan. It's funny. We seem to never really talk about Swan much, but I don't think that's a bad thing for Vanderbilt fans. And, there's some things to clean up. But overall, I thought it was really good from Swan. So that's what I've got.
I'll be short and sweet. This week, you'll get the blowout that everyone thought we would get against Hawaii. And then your reset and for our biggest test coming up in 2 weeks with Wake Forest.
All right, gentlemen, we'll looking forward to doing the post-game show. Hopefully no weather delays. Hopefully we can all get in there together. And here's the plan. The game kicks off at 6. So presuming it is lopsided, Billy will walk over to Chili's, probably get us set up to go. if it's a 3-hour game, maybe around 9:15, he and Luke will talk. Joey and I will go to the post-game press conference. We'll head over and join you at Chili's afterwards. I encourage people, if you're watching, come join us at Chili's. We thank them for letting us have that space for free. That's managed by Brian Gruber, who was a former Commodore offensive lineman. People whose history goes back a couple decades with Vanderbilt football will know that one. So thanks to Chili's. And again, it's going to look a lot different next week. Hopefully, please don't give us another lightning delay. I hate those. So anyway, that's the plan. And as we're wrapping up, just a reminder, we are on season 9, year 9 of this podcast, which I can't believe. This podcast has always been free. We plan to keep it free, but the bills don't pay themselves around here. And so here's how you can help keep the podcast free. First of all, give the podcast a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. That helps us get noticed. The algorithm will tend to favor the ones with a lot of reviews and a lot of good reviews. So that gets us visibility. That gets us noticed by people who may be Vandy fans and don't even know about us. And if they don't, tell your friends. If you are listening and you've not subscribed to VandySports.com, please do that. It is $99 a year, which is exactly what it cost when I started the website in January 2003. How many other things in your life have not gone up in price in almost 21 years? I'm guessing that's zero. You can go to McDonald's and spend $9.99 these days in one trip by yourself. So I think that's a bargain. $99 a year, or you can pay monthly at $9.99 a month. But if you are listening and have listened for a while and never subscribed to the website, I encourage you to do that, because again, you will get things there that you don't get here, and that helps us out, because again, we've got bills to pay. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're putting our podcast up there this year. That is free. It's just a follow. And finally, if you're interested in sponsorship, give me an email at chrislee70@gmail.com. Be happy to talk about that. We will have some donation options set up hopefully in the near future. And oh, by the way, we've got a ticket auction in our war room every week for tickets. We have a generous fan who has donated 4 seats literally right on the first row of the 50-yard line. So probably best seats in the house. We auction those off in the war room every week at Vandy Sports. Only condition is you've got to be a Vandy fan, and no reselling of the tickets. What the donor does not want is showing up and sitting next to 4 Georgia fans or whoever for a home game. So respect that. But that's a way you can help the site too, is the proceeds get donated to the site. Anyway, thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast. We'll catch you again. I think Billy's got the pregame episode coming out Thursday or Friday. That'll be the next one, followed by the postgame show Saturday night from Chili's. For Luke Wyatt, for Billy Derrick, I'm Chris Lee. We're Vandy Sports. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you again soon.